Hi there, I'm Tracy Austin, the Christchurch team leader for Thermomix. What I wanted to do tonight was just to have a go at running through the rice risotto from the menu matrix. And my thought is not to actually teach you how to cook it, but just to have a think about some of the language that you might use with your guests. And it's not also about providing them with answers, but maybe asking questions as we go along. Just to plant a bit of a seed for them to think about, oh gosh, how would I make this if I had a Thermomix, or what else could I make, or what other ingredients could I use? So I'm just going to get started, and I've got no one sitting here, but I'm going to pretend that I have, and I'm going to sort of ask some questions as if I was running a demo. So I'm just going to have a chat with them and say, hey, look, this is our rice risotto that we're going to make today. One of the things that you can do is you can scroll up and down here like you would as if it was a laptop, and you'll see that you've got all your ingredients and method like you would in a cookbook. But one of the things I really love and appeals to a lot of people is down the bottom you've got this macro breakdown of like the amount of protein and carbs and things like that. So if you're someone that's on a health journey, this is a fantastic feature. So I would have been checking out at the beginning of the demo when I'm asking them about themselves and what cooking looks like for them in their home. If anyone is on a health journey, if anyone's on a keto diet, or whatever that looks like, because then here's an opportunity to reference that back. If ever I'm making the rice risotto, I do tend to go for someone in the group where time is a problem, particularly busy mums, because this is something that is actually like just a 7-minute active time and then the rest is hands-free. And for a lot of people, that's a big selling feature. So you really want to dive into them when we're finding out about what food looks like for them at their home. So we're just going to tap back up here. And one of the things I do on my demo recipes is I always enter the notes that are further down, and you might see that there's a little green dot next to the word tips. So if I tap on that, it goes down, and I've said you can replace mushroom with other vegetables. So in this instance, that would be a great opportunity to show people how they can adapt it to their own needs. And in this instance, I'm actually making a pumpkin one. So I'm just going to head up here and I'm just going to get started. Now, as I go along cooking, I ask them to engage. So I'm not doing the cooking, I'm just here to support, but whoever's doing the cooking, I'd have a chat with them and ask them questions and ask the guests questions. So at the start, we're going to put some parmesan in. And what I tend to say to them, I would never use negative language. I wouldn't go, oh, watch out, it's really loud. I would go, now you're going to see the power of the Thermomix. We all know how rock hard parmesan is. And you're going to put this parmesan here and it's going to, grate it for us in a matter of seconds. I also, because I pre-measure my ingredients, I get it as close as I can so that I can show them that self-tick, which I absolutely love. I'm just going to grate the person that would be cooking is just about to grate this, so please hold for 10 seconds. So if I've got anyone here, one of the guests that has a TM6, I'd definitely be asking them if they've noticed a difference in the sound, because it is a lot quieter in the TM7. One thing I didn't do before I started push and go on video was to get another bottle, so I'm just going to get one very quickly so I can transfer the parmesan. Now I'd encourage anyone and everyone to practice all the dishes. Have a go at making them and see what works well for you. So I'm just going to transfer that into here. So that's fantastic. Now what I do is the next step asks us to wash the bowl. I certainly don't do that with a risotto because it just leaves some of the extra parmesan flavour in there just to add. So as I said, if you practice the dishes, you're going to figure out what works well and if there's any shortcuts. And they're things that you'd share with the people that are guests. So I just go to next. It says clean and dry, and I would say to them, I don't think we need to do that. We've got this beautiful parmesan. We've got a bit of parmesan left in the bowl. Let's just carry on. So then we're going to pop in a shallot. So at this point, I say to them, does anyone here like to cut onions? Usually everyone says no. And I'm able to say, well, I haven't cut an onion for 15 years. I do it for 3 seconds in my Thermomix. So it's just sort of planting a seed again for them that oh my goodness, sorry, that's planting a seed for them that, you know, how they could use a Thermomix in their house. So we're just going to go for 3 seconds. And I always, at every step, I take the Thermomix out and I show them. And I say, you know, could you cut onion that quickly? I'd also use that as an opportunity to say, you know, what else might you chop in your Thermomix if you had one? You know, do you chop other things on a regular basis? Because we now have that new chop feature in the TM7, which is fantastic. Pop that back on there. Right, so then I'd just add the butter. The person cooking would add the butter and tip that off. And the olive oil, let's do that for 40 grams. At this point, I also explain about how amazing the scales are, that they're in the feet and that they go in 1 gram increments, and that a lot of commercial scales do 5 gram increments. So it's great for someone that, say, wants to do sugar work or something. So again, it's just planting a seed. You may have someone sitting here who's a bit of a baker, or someone who likes making fudges or things like that. So that's really relevant for them. And then I also, I'll just tap next on there, saute. So this is a great conversation piece. So I would say to them, okay, so it's about to saute. So at the moment we've got a green light showing that it's, you know, cold. When it gets to 60 degrees, the light goes amber, and when it gets to 80 degrees or above, it goes red. And I'll say to them, you know, I'm going to invite you at some point when it's hot to come along and touch the bowl, and it will basically be room temperature. So it's super safe if you've got children or grandchildren in the house, and also super safe for people, you know, my age and above, who get a bit forgetful in the kitchen. And I often say, has anyone here ever accidentally left something on the stove, like frying some onion or something like that? And often people will go, oh yes, I have, and I had a bit of a disaster. And so I often will ask the question, what else would you saute? And people will often say onions or mushrooms or whatever. And I say, okay, so how do you saute? So again, that's me asking them questions. And they'll say, well, on the stove in a fry pan. And I'll go, oh, awesome. So when you're sauteing something with oil or butter on the stove, do you walk away from it? And they go, oh God, no. And I go, no, that's right. Okay, bye. And I'll walk off, because I show that for me, this is just gold, because I can safely walk away knowing nothing's going to get into trouble. And at this point, I show them that the light's gone red and that there's the wee Thermomix smile showing up on the bowl. The other thing that I tend to do if I'm at this point, you know, we've got 1.5 minutes, we're halfway through it. Often people will be talking and answering questions, but if, you know, if it gets quiet, I would say, so I've got 3 minutes. I can do a lot in 3 minutes. What would you do if you had 3 minutes? And then you just listen to them. Now, the really cool people say, oh, I'd pour a glass of wine. But the hands down, the number one answer that I've had over the last couple of years is I'd do the washing. You know, we're all busy people, and the thought that you could multitask, that dinner's cooking and you can walk away from the stove, is absolute gold. So again, this is why the risotto in particular is a fantastic dish to get your guest who really has time as their biggest challenge in the kitchen. And I think at the end of the day, we all have to cook every day because we all have to eat every day. And everyone has some kind of problem in the kitchen, whether they're trying to lose weight, whether they're trying to put on weight, whether they're time poor, whether they're bored because they've been cooking for 40 years and they're doing the same thing. So it's so important at the beginning to get an understanding of their them. So then, one, you can circle back to their them throughout and go, oh, I remember you said, you know, about healthy eating. Can you see how this would help? But also it allows you to choose which out of the 3 guests, or however many guests you've got, is going to cook what dish. So that's super useful as well. So we're down to our last 8 seconds. It's showing it's 120 degrees, and whoever's cooking, I'll say, you want to touch that for us? And you know, they're sometimes a bit nervous. And then they touch it and go, oh my goodness. So now we're just going to add the rice. And what I tend to do at this point, I take this off and I show them because it's sizzling away and it smells amazing. Everyone loves the smells of, you know, sauteing onions, but that way they can see it's just as if they've done it in a pan on the stove. So we're just going to add our rice. And, you know, you might want to explain a little bit about the history of rice and, you know, why you use arborio, because it's plumper. And here's our tick off again. And I would explain about the digital twin, about how there's that opaque circle, which is sort of the ceiling of where we want to go up to. And as food's entered into the bowl, it goes up green. And when it hits within 5% of the target, it'll automatically tick off. But I also explain that, you know, this is a guide. It's not a rule book. It's a guide, and if you want to add a little bit more or a little bit less, you can just manually tick it off. So it's going to saute again. So one of the things the chef told me a while ago is the reason it sautés here is it's essentially toasting the rice, so it really brings out a bit of a sort of a nutty, full of flavour of the rice. So that's fantastic. At this point, because I've got 3 minutes, I would probably jump into the next section of the demo of the flip chart and start going through some of that information. You've sort of got a 3-minute segment, unless someone's asking a question. Now, one of the questions I always ask people about risotto is, who has made a risotto? And you get one of 3 answers. Someone will go, no, way too complicated. Someone will go, yes, oh my goodness, I'm at the stove, stirring, and I always ask, you know, it's like peeling the layers of an onion. I would then say to them, oh, so how long are you stirring for? And they'll say 30 or 40 minutes. And I'll go, yeah, look, I totally get it. I used to make a lot of risottos. 45 minutes, you're chained to the oven top. And I'd say, what was your success rate like? And a lot of people are like 50-50, some people are 80. And so I'd talk about the frustration. If you got 80% success, how do you feel on the 20% time where you've spent 45 minutes and ingredients and you've had come out with gluggy glue, and you know everyone's going, oh yeah, that's so annoying. And so then I will sort of touch on the cookie dough app, and I'll say, look, we're going to talk about the cookie dough app a bit later, but the one thing I can tell you, like the Thermomix on its own is amazing, but you pair it with the cookie dough recipe platform, which has over 100,000 recipes. It's just unstoppable. And one of the things I love the most about it is that when you have a recipe from cookie dough, it's been cooked by 3 chefs, and if they don't approve it, it doesn't end up on cookie dough. So what that means is you're essentially getting a recipe guarantee. And I always will then show them at the end. I will present my dish like so it looks a bit like the photo, whether it fits in a bowl, I pop it in a bowl, and I will say to them, does this look like that? And they all go, oh my God, yes. And so then we have the conversations about, you know, who here hates to cook, or who here loves to cook. And we probably have touched on that a little bit during their them, but it's an opportunity to expand on that. Because there's one thing I can tell you, no one knows subject matter better than about themselves. So they're very, as long as they're happy to share, they'll be able to give the answers to the questions you're asking because they know all about themselves. So we've got another half a minute. What I tend to do as well at this point is I show them the ability to scroll ahead and see what else is coming, and that they could get these ingredients ready. Another thing that people talk about is they love the tidiness of the Thermomix on the bench. And so I say, look, I've put things in containers today just to have it pre-weighed, but if I was cooking from home, it just goes straight in there. So at the end of my cook, I usually have my Thermomix, the spatula, and maybe a spoon or a knife to clean. And they love that. And as they watch the demo, and they go, oh my goodness, I love that lack of dishes. So then we're just going to add the dry wine. Now I create a bit of fun with this. I always sort of have a bit of a laugh about who's heavy-handed when it comes to wine. So everyone normally has a bit of a chuckle around that. So we'll add the wine in there. Tracy's clearly heavy-handed. I've just added an extra 10, never mind. And then that's going to saute for 2 minutes. Now, I'll say to them, can you hear that bubbling away? Because that's the rice that's toasted. And so we would have a talk about, maybe at this stage, about, you know, what kind of risottos they like. I was saying before, sorry I forgot about this, they'll either say, no, I haven't made a risotto, or yes, I have. The third answer I sometimes get is someone will say, oh yeah, I make risotto, it takes 2 minutes in the microwave. And you're just like, oh dear, that's not risotto, that's a chemical storm. So it's great to, you know, I would then say to those people that have made a risotto before, I'm really keen to hear how this compares with the risotto you've made previously. And you know, sometimes you might have someone who's like chef quality here, who makes risottos and they're really good at it, and they're usually very pleasantly surprised with, you know, the lava sort of texture and flow of this risotto. So we're just going to scroll through here, we're going to see what's coming up, and I'll get those ingredients ready. And then I have a chat about, you know, what kind of flavour. So I've asked them what kind of risottos they like. And I would say, because mushrooms are very polarising, people either love them or they hate them. And I'm just going to say, look, I'm actually just doing a roasted pumpkin risotto today. I've got some pumpkin prepared. So all I do is, if it's asking for 250 grams of mushrooms, I add 250 grams of pre-roasted pumpkin. And then I would say, what other flavours would you have? And then I wait a minute, and someone might go, oh, courgette. And you go, yeah, what would go nice with courgette? And someone might say peas. Oh, brilliant, that's so good. And then when I'm sort of thinking about serving, or if there's a bit of a opportunity time-wise here, I would say, okay, so we've got pumpkin risotto, what else could we add to it to add a bit of colour? And then you just pause and see what they come up with. And, you know, someone might say spinach, and you go, oh, you're amazing, how nice would that be? And someone might say rocket, or, you know, whatever it might be. And so it just engages them, because it gets them thinking about how they would make it if they had this on their bench. Rightio. So, and the thing I love about this, I say to them, you know, basically if you can read a sentence, you can cook like a master chef, and if you struggle with that, you can look at the picture. So this is just asking for us to scrape the bottom. I don't make a big deal out of it. It's just a couple of little wee tickle-ups between the blades for a couple of seconds. And I usually show them, you know, what it looks like, that it's starting to, you know, brown on the bottom. And, you know, to expect that. So now we're just going to add the vegetable stock. Now, at this point in any dish, excuse me, any dish where I make add vegetable stock, I'll always talk about the beauty of vegetable stock in the Thermomix and how much money it saves me, and that I've, you know, you can use wilted old vegetables that were going to be, you know, destined for to be thrown out, and so it's all around that sustainability piece. And I'm just going to add the mushroom, not mushrooms, the pumpkin I said, didn't I? So I've got some beautiful par cooked pumpkin, so I haven't cooked it all the way because it's going to be added into here. And I tend to sort of go over a little bit, so that if someone says, oh, it's over, and I say, yeah, absolutely, I love pumpkin. So this is, as I say, it's a guide, not a rule book, so that they know that there's a bit of flexibility there. And then we're going to add the water. And so I will also always say, look, I love risotto, our family has it quite a lot. And I can tell you that the active time for me to get it cooking is 7 minutes. And then I will ask the question, does that sort of align with, you know, you for timing? So if you had someone in here who was particularly interested around time, I would say, so if you could have a meal underway and ready to go within 7 minutes, would that tick that box for you? You're certainly not going to get anyone that says no. So I just give that a quick tick. I don't make a big deal out of that at all. It just needs a little wee shiz at the bottom. Next, and then it's cooking. So I said, you know, with 7 minutes, and I'm now hands-free for 13 minutes. So if I was wanting to have this as an early dinner, if the kids had sport tonight, I could put this on, go to school, pick up, get home, and I know it's all ready, and I can walk out of the house leaving it safe as houses. So just thinking about some of the questions you could ask people how they would use some of the features, like what else would they saute? Can you walk away when you saute? What other ingredients would you use instead of mushrooms? How can you make this look more colourful? How can you get other veggies into it? And just thinking about those things. One thing that I would have also asked when I was doing the cheese was I always ask them, do you buy pre-grated cheese? And if they do, I go, yeah, absolutely. And how expensive is it? And they'll all go, it's really expensive. And you go, yeah, absolutely. It is more expensive than normal. We haven't bought grated cheese in 15 years because the Thermomix fixes that in 10 seconds. But also because you've got those anti-caking agents. And most people go, and they, some people are aware of it, some people aren't. So it's just you in a generous, kind, sharing way, letting them know that there's opportunities for them to improve their health and save money. Anyway, guys, I hope that was of value. This is going to be my dinner tonight, so I'm happy. And yeah, I'd encourage you all just to have a practice and maybe substitute use the mushroom recipe, but substitute courgettes one night or pumpkin, or try it with mushrooms and see how it fits for you. But this is an excellent dish to do around the flip chart because of the time periods in between some of those steps with the 2 minutes and 3 minutes and then 13. So at this 13-minute stage, I'd be going through all the closing pages of the flip chart, and then I'd be ready. I'd have it in a container, I'd do my PCT time, and then serve the risotto at the end with whatever else we had. Cool, good luck with your demos, and yeah, thanks for watching. Bye.